The Facility Guidelines Institute manages the process of development of two very important documents. One is the guidelines for design and construction of hospitals and outpatient facilities, and we have a new document being published for the first time in 2014, Guidelines for Design of Residential Health Care and Support Facilities. As part of that process, we develop multiple white papers to help support the guidelines development process and support a lot of research. One of the important initiatives that we're working on are related to acoustics. Noise and sound, which are two different things. Noise is unwanted sound, but the guidelines need to focus on acoustics because the number one complaint in healthcare facilities is noise, and that's by patients, families, and staff. The guidelines have been working very hard over the last 10 years to develop new acoustic requirements related to the design and construction of all of the different types of facilities that the guidelines are specifying in terms of these types of requirements. We've been very fortunate to have a very robust group of acoustic engineers working with the Facility Guidelines Institute in development of a number of white papers that have resulted in very important improvements to the guidelines. And with the improvements to the guidelines, they were seeing significant changes in the quality of the patient care environment and the environment for staff to work in our healthcare facilities.
We try to integrate the guidelines as a national standard and really bring California's regulatory environment a little more in sync with the rest of the nation. Relative to that as well, we look to the guidelines as a national standard. Our regulatory process requires us to go through adoption of any national standard through our own process, which means that it has to stand the test of a lot of special interests and really a lot of maybe criticism of various players that don't understand how or why the regulations came out the way they did in the guidelines.
So alarm fatigue is a growing awareness towards the impact of alarms on providers. How do providers behave when alarms go off? Now, the reason why this is so important is because on average, every patient has at least 4 to 5 different alarms. So if you have a hospital of 1,000 beds, and let's say it has a 90% occupancy, right? You're talking about, per shift, 5,000 different potentially false alarms per shift, per moment. So there's hundreds of thousands of these false alarms going off every day. And so the ability to both understand why they're going off, how to get them to get the right help, how to reduce the noise that they cause, because these alarms create a huge cacophony. And so the alarms will cause an average noise level of 50 to 80 decibels in the operating theater or in the intensive care unit. And so that, of course, leads to high blood pressure, high heart rates, stress, unhappiness, annoyance, disruptive behavior, and ultimately poor service.
The problem is we're catching up with the rest of the world. What do I mean by that? Well, the issue of noise, it fell off the table 3 decades ago. We got caught in the Washington logjam, and there's been a very little enforcement of noise issues in this country. But while we've been not doing anything, other parts of the world have actually been doing a lot. So if you look at the European Union, which has very strong noise policies, you look at Asia, Eurasia, most other places in the world actually have much stronger noise control, noise regulation policies than the United States does now.
They have an objective of putting some numbers on these outcomes that we're trying to achieve. And they deal with it just like we deal with any other problem. We have to be talking about the finishes of a building, surface finishes, which tend to affect the sound actually heard by a receptor in the building, whether it's a patient or caregiver or whoever. And these are developed in a way that hopefully they'll stimulate the designer to be able to provide solutions.
FGI establishes a level playing field. That is to say, it's a level playing field on which architects and designers and healthcare administrators play by a better set of rules. And when they play by a better set of rules, you get a better game. Basically, you get better outcomes.